Thought I'd let you know who I am. I'm Sam Shi, a junior computer science BS music minor. I'm the chief academic officer at App Team Carolina. If you don't know, App Team has sort of two tracks. One's the learning track and one's the production track. I run our two learning sub teams. So I get to make our curriculums and lead them through their intro to iOS. I'm also a learning assistant for Comp 426, which is a fun fact. Thought I'd give a little background on my iOS experience. So you sort of know where I'm coming from. It got started about 2 years ago, 2.5 maybe, the fall of 2019. I've been doing my own little side projects. My most recent one is called Navi. It's a little navigation app, but simplified as much as possible. It just gives you an arrow to your destination and how far away you are from it. Sort of intention is that you learn the way, your way around places you live, instead of just following maps, as I've fallen into. So I guess the use case is I'm trying to get to Citizen, and plug it in and actually figure out the best route. And also I'm an optimizer. I like to figure out the best way to get places, and I know it's fun. I've been doing App Team for about 1.5 years now. I'm the chief academic officer and an individual contributor on our production team. I had an iOS internship last summer at a beauty supply company called Beauty Counter. And I'll be at Pinterest this upcoming summer, which I'm really excited for. So I thought I'd sort of give you an overview of how we'll be making apps in iOS. There's a few ways to do so now, but SwiftUI is sort of the more modern, sort of new hotness these days. It was released in 2019 at WWDC, the Worldwide Developers Conference, Apple's developer event, where they announce developer tools and new iOS features so that developers can make third-party apps for them for the iOS release in the fall. It's a framework for making apps on all Apple devices. Love a good typo. You can run SwiftUI on watchOS or macOS or iOS or tvOS, which was sort of one of the big barriers to expanding to making apps for multiple platforms before. You'd have to learn UIKit to make iOS apps, and WatchKit and AppKit for macOS. So just a lot of things to learn. This is sort of working to unify all these platforms. And now I can be an Apple platforms developer instead of narrowing into iOS. There's this thing called the SwiftUI mindset, which is sort of how you need to think in order to write good SwiftUI code. It's a declarative reactive programming framework. So it'll feel similar to React. If you have React experience, you'll see the words state, and you sort of just talk about how your app is gonna look in different states, and let the system control that, instead of saying oh, I received a click event, let me find the table in my view hierarchy and add rows. You'll say display a view for each element in this array, and when the array changes, the view will be redrawn, sort of like that, which makes the view a function of the state. So this completely eliminates this whole class of errors where your view is out of sync with your data, whether you missed an edge case where your data could be changed, but you don't update that in the view. It doesn't happen anymore, which is really nice. I wanted to talk about a few basic SwiftUI views, sort of the building blocks or the leaf nodes in our view hierarchy. There's text. I'm kind of a nerd and like to see the actual initializer signature. So text is just a textual element that gets put on screen. It takes in a string or something string-like, and we'll render it on screen. It's as simple as declaring a text, open close parens, open close double quotes, welcome to SwiftUI. And this fun Swift fact, Swift has parameter labels built into the language, but having this underscore instead says like let the external parameter label be omitted, but call it content in the initializer, which is kind of cool. Don't worry about that. Little programming language fun fact. Image is another one that we'll be using today. There's sort of two main classes of images in SwiftUI. There's like custom images that we provide ourselves. So we would add an image to our asset catalog. Like in here, I have these different images that I put into our asset catalog manually. I gave it a reasonable name and used this name initializer to render this image. And images have a size and they have aspect ratios. So it probably won't do what we expect the first time around, but we can manipulate it a little bit to get it to the right size. This is something unique, probably not unique actually. This is something nice about iOS. We're provided with this huge asset like icon library that we're just free to use. Which if you don't know, this is a really big deal. Finding your own icon libraries has been a thing for the past however many years on iOS. You'll find some weird websites with icon libraries, or like you'll have to make them yourself. But these are great icons. They're like very high quality. They're built into the operating system, so they're just there for us to use. And from a user experience point of view, like you should use these icons as much as you can. Like, who knows what this icon is? Excuse me. I guess I gave it away. Like, we know what this icon means, right? It's called square.and.arrow.up, but we know this is a share icon, right? And if you try and like create your own share icon, it's not going to be the clearest. Like, this is just like undeniably share, and iOS users like know that. They're very easy to use, and they're used across like all iOS apps. And this is, you can kind of, if you use an iPhone, you know what like a good iOS app feels like. And iconography is one of those like factors. Yeah, so those are sort of the main like leaf nodes, like the main building blocks. And all of these other views, most of these other views like wrap these elements. And there's other things that conform to the view protocol, like color and shapes and stuff, which we'll talk about later. This is one of my favorite parts about SwiftUI, is how we lay things out. I've been working with HTML and CSS a little bit, but like enough that I should know how it works. And every day I have to be like, hey, Morgan, how do I put two things next to each other? And how do I like make this work? And this is just trivial in SwiftUI. So there are 3 ways to lay out views. There's a V-stack, which is a vertical stack. So like 2 things like this, right? Like 2 things are on top of each other. A horizontal stack, like maybe this bullet point is an icon in this text. Like these are laid out horizontally. And Z-stack, I don't know an adjective to describe that, but it's like in and out, right? You can imagine this background color is behind this text. So we could have a Z-stack with one element being the background color and another element being this collection of views here. And like, that's all you need to know, really. There's other sort of convenience things for sizing, like overlays and backgrounds, like explicitly, but you can do everything you need to do like this, which is really interesting. So this is sort of our, oh no, I lost a page, like a slide divider. Oh no. This is like these things I just talked about, like these views and these layout containers are sort of like the HTML, if you have HTML and CSS background. And view modifiers are how we would get the CSS. And this is an interesting thing about SwiftUI. I like it because I get frustrated when reading HTML and CSS, like having to have like 6 different files open at the same time. to reason about one component, I can just see everything here. And this is really interesting to me. So this text is a view, right? And we apply this modifier by calling a function on it that returns, oh my gosh, I don't have a function signature here. Let me see if I can find one. Let's do this. Title. And I'll find the function signature. Yeah, this is a function on, on text, and it returns a text. Okay, so it sort of uses like the builder pattern if you want to go to your Gang of Four design patterns, but it takes in, or it's not, that doesn't take in, it is applied to a view and spits back out another view. So it wraps the original view in this modified content. And like this is all powered by the SwiftUI type system, or the Swift type system, which is crazy. Like Swift's static typing does a lot for us here. But we can see I have a VStack with some text that I've applied padding to. And I'm printing out its type. Yes, what's up?
You say it scraps the original view, we like call that font on it.
Mhm.
If the original views remain unchanged, you can actually use it elsewhere without the font applied to it.
So that's no, because these are data types, which is, well, actually, it depends on how you declare it. So if you have like a reusable view, you can define something like this. Like I have my music player view, which is just a structure that I can, call in multiple places like this. So like, yes, this won't be affected. This instance won't be affected by modifying this.
But it is affecting the instance.
Yes, yeah. Or yes, it's it's kind of hard to reason about because these are views in SwiftUI are structures like in C. So they're data types, and yes, but it'll like it can cascade down into the instance. So like I can have like a foreground color or something that would change stuff in there. I can actually show you. We have a live preview for this, which is pretty cool. Oh, yes, so like this music player view is not implemented yet, but it affected the text color in its instance. I think is what you're asking. So it wraps the original view, and if we look at the type, it returned some modified content, and this is like a generic type, right? So it's one of its wrapped types is a VStack that contains text, and it's modifying it with some padding, which is kind of interesting. So I'm glad I got through that relatively quickly. So I wanted to jump into code. I want to implement this Spotify music player UI, which is sort of ambitious, but not really, because SwiftUI makes UI development super fast and super easy. It's made super fast by this live preview. I can change the foreground color, and in a couple seconds it's updated. So like iteration is very quick, and it's super easy because in 10 minutes you guys just learned like the bulk of SwiftUI layout, which is pretty neat. If you want to follow along, feel free. I might go fast. Let me know if that happens. But like I don't expect you to follow along at all. Xcode is necessary to follow along, and it's like a ginormous download that might take hours. So don't feel like you have to follow along at all. And I want to sort of break things down before we jump into the code. So I drew this up. It's an okay visualization of the layout here, right? So we have this main content, which I think would be a vertical stack, right? Because we have some elements that are laid out vertically. That's like the main sort of vibe that I get from this view, right? And then I have 3 other elements aligned horizontally with this H stack. I have an image in the middle. I have another horizontal stack where one element is a V stack. I have another collection of things. One is just a slider and the other is another horizontal stack. I have a horizontal stack below it and another horizontal stack. So these things are all composable because almost everything conforms to view, which is a protocol. So you can put views wherever you want, and a lot of things are views, which is sort of different, including colors, which I can demonstrate real quick. So if I throw in a little V stack here, I can have a color as one of my views, and which is really interesting. You don't have to make an empty div and give it a background color, or this is one thing that people will do a lot. They'll like make an empty rectangle and fill it with a color. Like that just feels like what you need to do, right? The color is a view, which is really interesting. I'll get rid of all this nonsense. Not too far. But yes, everything is a view, and including the like background gradient that we'll use. And that's one thing I couldn't denote on this diagram, is that all of this is on top of a background gradient, which is pretty cool. And like now that I've sort of broken down this user interface into these parts, I feel ready to jump in. And you'll find, like I've started to do this now. Like if I look at any sort of user interface, maybe the App Lab website, like I can reason about how that would be broken down into these like vertical and horizontal stacks. And it makes me wonder why we have so many different, more complicated models of layout, which is pretty interesting. Like there are limitations in some places, but like they can be easily worked around. All right, let's jump in. I'm going to this and pull up my reference image. And yeah. Okay, cool. Just cleaning things up. I'm doing all this work in this music player view. I guess I should talk about Xcode for a minute. This is my Xcode project. This file is a folder containing like metadata about my project, including like order of things, which I find really nice because I hate like how in VS Code or something, everything's ordered alphabetically. Like that does not make sense to me. I can reorder things, and there's information about the build target, like the minimum iOS version, and you can have all sorts of like build phases if you need to, like if you want to lint your project, like enforce code styling locally. But like this group here is where like our code is going to go. And this app file with this struct that conforms to app and is annotated with that main is like our entry point. And this is sort of representative of our app. I don't know too much about it because it's just kind of, it works. But it has a reference and instantiates our content view, which is sort of our view's entry point. You could call this whatever, but the content view is sort of a canonical name. And I could like do all this work in content view, but I didn't do it with this. I'm not going to do it today, but in another version of this that I've done before, I reused this music player view for multiple songs. It's like I want this piece of UI to be reusable in multiple places or with different content. So I'm like abstracting it into its own like kind of like abstracting it into a function. You know, I want to be able to use this in multiple places, or with different parameters. And we will have a copy of some song struct, which just is sort of like a data container in this case with information about the title and the artist and whether or not it's favorited and stuff like that. And Swift is going to automatically generate a member-wise initializer for this. So I don't have to write, it can make it for me. I don't have to write this initializer in every in every part of my app, like I might have to in Java or something, which I find to be very convenient. Okay, let's jump into this. And the first thing I'm going to do is move my face and get my reference image back. I love fighting with Windows, especially live. I'm going to hide the left bar because I don't need it right now. Okay, cool. So if we look back at our sort of like map, right, we have this VStack that contains all of our content, but it's going to be on top of, in the vertical direction, as I've defined, of our background color. And like I mentioned before, colors and like most things are views in SwiftUI, including this linear gradient type, which takes in a few arguments. One is a color array, and I've like predefined some colors in this colors.swift file, which are pulling colors out of my asset catalog, just where like in the same place that I put my images. I like to have like one file to declare these because I don't trust myself with strings. And if I like mistype this, it won't work. It won't crash, but it'll just be white or something. And in Swift, we can extend types wherever we want, however we want, which I find to be really nice. And I'm able to use this dot syntax in this color array because this color array has type like array of color. So it knows every single element in this array will be a color. So instead of having to say color dot paradise top, it's reasonable to just say dot paradise top. And you'll see me use that a lot. Like my unit point is dot top instead of unit point dot top, which just sort of cleans things up. So see, I have my my gradient here. I'm going to use a modifier to ignore the safe area. The safe area on an iPhone is sort of the area of the screen that we don't want to put stuff in. So like under the notch or under the home indicator, which you can't see here, but if you know iPhone, there's a little capsule shape down here. And like inside of here is where we can reasonably say that it's safe to put content without it being obstructed. And right now I'm going to have a V stack, and right, I have an H stack here. And this first item in my horizontal stack is an image, right? If we check out our SF symbols, there is like I know this because I've used these 1,000 times, but we have a chevron like dot down system image, and it's reasonably sized now. This is one thing I haven't mentioned yet, is like how to push things apart, because in these, let's see, this song not playing. Right, these are close together, right? And that makes sense because if we have something horizontally stacked, it makes sense to put them close together. But if we want to space them out, Noah, what do we use? A spacer, which is another view. And there's sort of two views in SwiftUI, or two sorts of views. There's, I haven't come up with good names for them, but sort of like greedy views, which will take up as much space as they can. So like our background gradient did, like this spacer does, it takes up as much space as it can because it doesn't have any like reasonable size. Like, what's the size of a color? I don't know. Like something like text has size. We can make we can draw a rectangle around it that sort of like contains the text. So like maybe that's a frugal view. I don't know. I haven't come up with good names for that. And then we have another image on the other side called ellipses. And I don't like how close these are to the edges, so I'm gonna add the V-stack. And that's just gonna add some padding, some space around the V-stack. What's that?
Well, like you just started like padding. How did it know how much padding you want?
That's a great question. I believe that, so there's something called the environment in SwiftUI, which is like all of these views are in the same hierarchy, and you can pass data through it. Sort of, you can pass like the current. Let me see. You can pass the font size. Like you can change the font size on your phone. Like I know my grandma like throws the font size way high on her phone to help her see. Yeah, it's like stuff like this is stored in the environment, like the size category and stuff. I believe that there's a padding, like a default padding baked in, which is helpful in cases where we have like the navigation bar, which isn't right up against the side. And we don't have to guess like the pixel or point count of that. We can just say like, hey, give me like the default padding. And I think that'll help us out there. But you can also specify like, I want 12 points, or on the top edge, I want 12 points or something. But just the default padding is good enough for me right now. And there's this, but I don't like how this looks right now. I think this is too, like this text is too big with our reference image, right? I want this text to be smaller. So I'll bump the font size down. And this is another cool thing. We're provided with like a large number of like default font sizes that are sort of markdowny. We see like title 1 or title 2, title 3, title, large title, like those might be your, or like they're also HTML-y, like those might be your H1 through H4. But we have, it goes deeper than that. I can maybe find this image, but it's actually in here. But like how they relate to each other, and they're like default font sizes in different size categories. But like I'm provided with all of these things. And one sort of, there's a couple of reasons that I like to use these fonts, these baked in fonts. One is because you'll never be free. One is because they automatically scale with dynamic type, which is a good accessibility concern, right? If we bump up this font size to accessibility extra large, it'll scale automatically. And like we get that for free with this. And also like for consistency, right? If we just say, I want to use the system font, which is in iOS right now, it's SF, like the San Francisco font. But if I want to like have a size 12, that looks fine. But maybe in a week I'll use size 14 font for the same like type of text. And like from a like design perspective, we want consistent typography across our app. So like using these built-in font sizes like dot caption, right? Like will help us enforce consistency. And this also looks kind of bold to me, so I'll just throw on this bold modifier, which is, I think it's convenience for modifying the font weight, which we have a lot of options for. I think bold looks good in this context. And I promise I don't know all this. Like I don't have it memorized. I have my old code right next to me. And I just I got all this, I got all these like number literals that I might be using just from experimenting, and like comparing between a reference image or something. I think that's important to note. I'm not just some genius who knows everything. Far from it. And now I have this image, right? So I'm going to say image. And like we saw before, we just use this like name initializer without a parameter label. I think I call it paradise in my asset catalog. And whoa, like that is not what we want. This is because this image has a size. I would find it, but that's unnecessary. Like it's probably like, 2000 pixels by 1000 pixels or something. 2000 pixels by 2000 pixels. And we like deal with this by making this image resizable. So that turns it into one of our greedy views where it takes up as much space as it can, right? So you see like it filled in all of our space like as much as it can, like, safely. It's gonna not expand out past our padding or overflow on top of our like top bar H stack up here. But then I want to scale it to fit, and it's going to use like the default aspect ratio and like look at how much space it has available. So there's scale to fit and scale to fill. It's going to look at how much space it has available, and let's see if I can use this right. It'll take, so we have a rectangle of available space, and when we have scale to fit, it's going to match the image's largest dimension to its available space's smallest dimension, and when it's filling, it's going to match the image's smallest dimension to the area's largest dimension. And that's sort of freaking me out right now. So you can see, like, I guess this image is a square, so its two dimensions are the same, but it's going to fill all the way through its bounding box's largest dimension. We have fit. It's going to make sure that the whole image fits inside by scaling to its bounding box's smallest dimension. It's like so much mental gymnastics to reason about that, but it makes sense. I want to scale it so it fits or it fills its entire like available space. And I think, yeah, that's like plenty. I think I might have, no, that looks fine to me right now. It looks smaller for some reason. I think, and we could just add some padding here. This is another thing. We could, 24. We could like give this a fixed size, but that doesn't scale well with different screen sizes. If I say I want this to be 300 points wide, maybe the iPod Touch is 250 points wide or something. And so I encourage my Academy members to like be wary of fixed size images and like fixed size anything, like buttons, for example. Like they're fine sometimes, but like you just have to be intentional about it and like test it on the different screen sizes, just like a responsive website. Okay, that looks good so far. And then if we think about our diagram from earlier, like what's going to be our next element in this V stack here? Any takers? So so far in this V stack, we have had our top bar H stack, had an image. What's going to be coming next? Sort of like an H stack, yay! Like, do we see how that follows? Right, we have some horizontally laid out content. And that was probably a tricky one to throw you guys into because we have both some vertically aligned content and horizontally aligned content. But one thing you can do to kind of decide between those two is like how are these centered, or like how are they like horizontally aligned or vertically aligned to each other? Like, does this heart look like it's below this, or those are sort of questions you can ask yourself. So I'm going to throw in a V stack here, and I'm starting to get overwhelmed with my body code here. And like in just static HTML, the answer is deal with it. I think I'm like bashing HTML, but without much experience. But the answer is deal with it. You're just going to get this really long HTML file, and like you just have to deal with it. Like these views are just data right here. They're just data types. They're just Swift structs. So I can. This is one thing I like about Swift UI. Is like there's nothing special going on here. Like these are just closures with fancy syntax. That's one cool thing to talk about. I have mixed feelings about it these days, but let's see. Can I find this? This Z-stack initializer takes in an optional like alignment parameter and a closure that gives you nothing and asks you to return content or content conforms to view. And Swift has this trailing closure syntax where if your last parameter is a closure, you can omit its argument label and put it after the parentheses. And if you have no other arguments, you can omit the parentheses altogether. So this is a call to initializer. Like the syntax is crazy. Like the moral of the story is that there's nothing special about this. And it's not any like, it's not something you can reproduce yourself. It's not anything crazy. So what I can do is make my own computed property. This is another thing that's sort of unique to Swift, I think. It's kind of like a method call, but it feels like you're accessing a property. It allows you to sort of do work. Like if you want to like do some formatting and like turn an integer into a string, like you can have like a formatted date computer property or something that would like allow you to do some work before returning the value. Like this is the same syntax that we used for our body, right? And this is like what's going to be rendered on screen, and nothing should change. Yeah, the project still builds and compiles just fine because there's nothing really special going on here. No clue. Sometimes it just happens. So what I'm going to do throughout this now is pull out these chunks of my view into their own computed properties. And then my body becomes like a story about my view. And it says like, I'm going to have a background. I might even move this one out too. Background conforms to some view or returns some view. Yeah, I'm going to have a Z stack with my background behind a V stack, which has a top bar, some album art, and it's going to have like some song information and a heart button, and like this becomes a story, and you can find top bar further down, which I think is really nice. And nothing should have changed. So actually, I do know the answer to your question, Jeff. Your previous pauses when like it can't figure out the diff well, I guess. So like this hot reloading of the view is because like Apple engineers are smart and can figure out like what's changed between your views and like automatically update the preview. But when I do something I do like a structural change, I think it gets scared and like wants to start over, I guess. And then, so next thing I'm gonna have this H stack. I'm gonna have a V stack with the song.title and the song's artist, right? And this is another thing. This V stack initializer can take in an alignment argument. but it has a default value, so we can omit it. I'm going to give it that default value for alignment. I want it to be aligned to the leading edge. This is another unique thing about like iOS. We don't say the left edge. I think because of right to left languages. I think right to left languages, like Hebrew maybe, Hebrew, Arabic. Yeah, I couldn't find that word in my head. Like they read right to left. I don't know because I don't use my phone in Hebrew or Arabic, but it might like flip the view around for us. So if we had put these two things in the H stack, like, semantically this makes sense to us. Oh, it's gonna complain because it doesn't make sense to align things. Like, maybe it would make sense to flip this around for right to left languages, which is kind of interesting. And then some quick styling on this. I want the font to be the third title. I want it to be bold. And I want this to have the same caption font size. And I want its font weight to go down. I want it to be a light font like this. Oh, I need to change that. Oh, live coding is fun. All right, you see, this is looking a lot closer to our reference. Looks small. That's just because. Yeah, I mean, it's the exact same code, so it's fine. And then I want to space things out with the what, everybody? Spacer. And then I want to use a heart SF symbol, right? And this is a weird thing that might not make sense, but these symbols are symbols in the SF font. So we can use fonts to scale them, which is kind of bizarre. But these are just symbols, and this is useful when we want to align like an image and some text. We can just scale them with the same font, and they'll be like sized the same. It's really cool. I don't know why this looks so much different from my other thing. The screenshot is from this. Oh, it's because I did this. Yeah, because I read wrong. I want to give this a different foreground color. I want it to have like a secondary foreground color. If we have time, we'll make this like interactive, but we probably won't. I'll abstract these things out. So I'll make a song info property and a favorite button. I haven't made that yet. So that's why it's not auto completing. And nothing should change, except I have errors now. It's because I inserted a pi, because the keyboard shortcuts are pretty similar. And yeah, everything's back to normal. Okay, cool. And like you can see, we're getting closer to the end now. I'll format my code. I'm sorry if I'm doing things fast. It's because I'm a keyboard shortcuts kind of person, and that's just how I operate. I think it's okay.
I don't use Xcode, but I'm noticing you're mousing around a fair bit.
Right. Most of the time, yeah. Well, I moused over to the resume because I missed the command and wrote pi instead. But yeah, I also don't mind using the mouse sometimes. I understand the Vim lifestyle, but sometimes it's a little too much for me. Oh, I missed the song timer. And so we could do this like slider with like the baked in slider. Let's see, song dot. don't worry about the syntax right now. It's fine. Like we could do this, but it doesn't look quite right because the like thumb is really big. So I made like my own little slider. Wrapping a UI kit view, which is another good thing. You can rely on the older frameworks that are more customizable. But like I made it with semantics that are similar to the like default slider. So this is the first time we're going to see like state, which is fun. And this syntax is like way better than React's stateful syntax. It's just this. We just like annotate our property with @state, a property wrapper. It doesn't have to be private, but it's just like a good reminder to me that like I shouldn't use this anywhere else. Because one of the problems we're going to run into is that if I just pass this double, it just has like type inference. They're still statically typed, but it can figure out what they are. If we pass this double, it's going to be passing a copy of the double. And if this like subview tries to manipulate it, it won't change this elapsed time property up here. Like if we remember our 110 stack diagrams, we're going to be passing like a copy of this double to the subview. And if it messes around with it, it's not going to change. Most of the time you want that. That's good, but not right now. Right? I want this elapsed time to change. So another just like weird syntax thing, I put a $sign in front of it. And this is convenience syntax for a binding, and a binding in Swift UI. Let's see. I don't remember the initializer. Maybe this is enough. Okay, a binding, its initializer just has a closure for getting and setting the initial value, like the wrapped value. So that $sign syntax just gives us like a binding. It's sort of syntactic sugar for that. So we're not really passing this. We're not really passing the actual. Whoa, where am I? This is not the same. Excuse me. Okay. We're not passing the actual elapsed time. We're passing instructions on how to get and update this variable, which is kind of weird. And this state property works a lot like it would in React. It will update the view when changed. So we don't have to worry about calling like view.reload or something. It'll just change automatically. And now this slider, when it changes its elapsed time binding, it'll update this one. And when we update this, it'll be updated here. Everything just works. And if I run this, it should update. And the next thing I'm going to do is have our H stack with some text, which is our elapsed time. And we should be able to see that's not a string. So we use Swift string interpolation syntax, which is weird. It's not the best syntax, but you can see it will change the this elapsed time up here. And calling and referencing elapsed time without the $sign is like the wrapped value. And then I might just like, this is one thing I should have copied into the starter code. I'm going to do it. I'm sorry, Morgan, that you're following along and I'm just copying code. But deal with it. I have some more computer properties down here that just like convert my elapsed time double into some strings. One's the done. Okay, cool. One is like the current duration. It's going to convert it into minutes and seconds. And then same thing for the total duration. that's just a little convenience thing. I can call this, should have remembered current duration, spacer. I should see this is coming together better now. I applied some formatting to those things. This is one cool thing. Like any modifiers that can cascade will cascade, and like the font size and the foreground color. We'll do this. And yeah, I might stop because I'm running out of time. But like the rest, we could reason about how to implement, right? We would have another H stack with these images just formatted specially, and another H stack with some green text and an image and some more images. Does this make sense to people? It should make sense to people who have been doing it for a month. What about our newbies? Like, do we sort of understand like the mindset and what's up?
Well, can we use that images as a player?
Yeah. So that's one thing I didn't get to talk about. So maybe I'll make my favorite button an actual button. We have a button here, and like this isn't very clear, but we just pass in a closure, like a block of code, which is what we want to do, and another one that's what we want it to look like. And this label, like its only constraint is that it's a view, and we can make anything a button. Like this will look normal. We run it real quick. Like actually simulate the app instead of just previewing the UI. When I click on the button, it's going to print this stuff. So it's just going to call whatever I provide here as the action whenever it's tapped on, or whenever it's interacted with like voiceover or something. So like we get good voiceover support for free like this, which is pretty cool. Yeah. Any other questions? What's your name?
I'm James.
Hi, James. Do you have any questions? No, you don't know what you don't know. Yeah, I understand. Like, do you feel like you're starting to get it?
I understand like the gist of it all.
That's all I want you to understand.
I wouldn't recreate it yet.
That's
because I
okay.
just don't know, like, the code,
Yeah.
and that stuff.
Yeah, and like, I would say neither do I, but that's a lie. Neither did I for a really long time. You know, I just like hack things together until I had done it enough times that it became sort of like built in, and I had like memorized it accidentally, kind of. I'll just do a couple more things to make it. Let's like add some spacers real quick. Just to sort of do this, maybe I'll add another spacer at the bottom. Like, we can see we're getting closer now, which is pretty neat. Do we want to leave or like stick around for like 5 minutes while I finish this out? Okay, it'll be quick. Like everything is really simple following this out. Okay, cool. And now I want to have another H stack. First image is called shuffle, which is nice. I have an image called, wait, before I finish this, I have one more slide. It's a plug. Fun fact, this is an Academy project. It was their first project, and everyone here did a good job on it. Haven't, thank you. Yeah, you didn't do it. I didn't get the chance to see Sia's, but I remember Noah and Kieran's. Did you do puzzle pieces?
No.
No.
Cigarette shaped daydream.
Very
Yeah.
similar vibe.
Yeah.
And you did helium. but like this was an app team project, and people here did a great job, and they had been doing it for they'd been doing Swift UI for 1 week. So if you're interested in learning more about iOS, feel free to join App Team and check us out on Instagram, which is fun. Let's just do this real quick. The next thing is called word.end.fill. And this is covering that. And then the next one is called depends on the current state. I think it's pause.circle.fill. And the next one is called forward.end. Yeah, and then the last one is called arrow.triangle.to.circle path. Some of these names are kind of silly. That's okay. And let's give these some font sizes real quick. Your title 2 and your large title. And this one, we don't have text that goes big enough, so we're going to do this by hand. And we're going to use the same. This is still an image, right? So we're going to use the same thing, but I'm going to break my own rule and use a fixed font, like a fixed frame, which is okay because I tested this out. I didn't. Like 60 points is going to be safe on different phone screens. And then last one, it's going to follow like they're symmetrical. Real quick. Okay, very cool. And I had some spacers in here. I'm sorry, again, I'm going to do something really fast that'll take you a longer time to do. I'm going to use, oh no. Yeah, I know, right? Oh, I missed one. Dang it. That wasn't much faster. Use some multiple cursors, which is fun. And then real quick, I'm gonna actually pull this out real quick. I'm accruing a lot of things. Okay. And then what's next? The bottom bar, I think. And that's just this system AirPods Pro. Yeah. And then text that says Sam's AirPods Pro. Actually, I'm gonna make these a label. Label is just another thing. It just kind of takes in a string and a system image and just puts them next to each other real nice for us. And like handles scaling them to make it look right. And this is going to be a font with caption, and its foreground color is going to be green. You see we're getting close. Spacer, and the system name, square dot and dot arrow dot system name, list dot bullet dot below dot rectangle. Some of these are just very verbose and descriptive, I guess is the nice way to say it. I don't know. I'll get a job at Apple, make that, and then quit. That would be nice. You should submit some feedback, Morgan. Like I use Xcode all the time, and I just really wish that it would autofill as a symbol. Some people have made like libraries that have oh, I didn't even know I was running into the maximum number of things. That's cool. What's last? I think we're about done. Yeah. Oh, last thing. This can take in another alignment or another argument called this. Aha, and that's why I didn't need the padding on the album art before. There we go. Some new lines just to clean things up. So, thank you. I did a great job. Yeah, this is this, and I think it's pretty neat. I can add this in 1 second, so you can see something interactive. Let's have another stateful property, and let's go and find our play button. And with that same action label initializer. The people who sort of know what's going on might be confused as to why I'm making it look like this. It's a good question, because there's like a much cleaner syntax, but I don't think I like it these days. So what I'm trying to do is make this play pause button change images, right? So how might we do that, current Academy folks? Kind of give a hint. Oh yeah, the question mark colon. Ternary operator, yeah. And this is just a nice way to like do this without having to like have an if statement and like if is playing, and like the only thing being different is like this image name, right? We can just do this. And now, whoa, this is crazy. This button changes. But that was, I think that was the most of the React workshop, making a toggleable button. And I did that in like a second. So
Good job.
I'm React 65 is better than React. I'm better than React. I'm kidding. React has its place in the world. I've used React, but for mobile apps, this is the way to go. I guess we're done.